So it was May 2020, and I was on a walk having just received some pretty terrible news. News that was worse for my family than it was for me, but I walked ahead of the pack all the same. I needed space, you know. I heard somewhere that we have two brains which are almost entirely independent of each other. The right brain just sort of does stuff, and then the left brain tries to rationalize it afterwards. That's a gross oversimplification, I'm sure, but that day, I found myself opening SoundCloud and pressing play before I really knew why. But it only took like 2-3 seconds for my left brain to know that my right brain had made the right call.
Spirit of my silence, I can hear you, but I'm afraid to be near you, and I don't know where to begin, and I don't know where to begin.
My priority in grief is always, well, usually, to ensure the happiness of others. Not because I'm a saint or supremely altruistic or anything like that, but that the grief of the living is of greater grief to me than my personal grief at the dead. Except for that day. That day was different, when I was encouraged by Sofiane's whispered confession that he's losing strength and purpose, everything. I feel like him. In this one moment, I really understand. Or at least I think I do. And right now, that's enough. I know that every time a loved one dies, I'll put this song on. And as such, it carries a sort of eeriness. I know that it's going to decorate the hallways of my future at undisclosed dates in painfully unknown locations. I know that I'll hear it again in some of the worst moments of my life. Which scares me a little bit, to be honest. But then I remember, the song doesn't play like cannon fire at battle's end, set off against my will by some invisible transcendent power. It will play because at that moment I will choose to play it. Because at that moment there is nothing that I'd rather hear. No collection of sounds, words and memories that could cradle my grief better. The song's nearly over now, alternating between his heavenly falsetto that we'll soon become accustomed to and his soft-spoken verse which we're already at home in. But there's one final truth before we go.
But every road leads to an end. Yes, every road leads to an end. Your apparition passes through me in the willows and 5 red hens. You'll never see us again. You'll never see us again.
It's a horrible thought, really. There's no heaven, reincarnation, or communication with the dead in this moment, regardless of your faith or beliefs. In this life, the world in which we all currently reside, we will never see their face again. We'll never hear their voice say anything new. We'll never hold their hands or feel their breath or see them leave that one last time. They're gone. But that's okay. We were lucky to have seen them at all. I am very lucky in the fact that the first part of this song is perhaps more alien to me than it would be to others, at least for now. But with that being said, it remains true that we all have bad memories, or even just moderate to bad ones that sting regardless, because what hurt as kids hurts double now for no good reason. Every human ever alive, ever, needs love from those who brought them into the world, even sons like Sofiane with mothers like Carrie. We are also, for the most part, united in a desperation for perfection, for that is the one place where we imagine peace must exist, at least contingently. It reminds me of a remark from BoJack Horseman, where the titular character reflects on what a privilege a plausible fantasy is. I can't find the clip, and I double can't replicate Will Arnett's gravelly voice, so I'm just gonna say it. I never thought that the orphans were sad. I always thought that they were lucky, because they can imagine their parents to be anything they wanted. They had something to long for. Sophiane wasn't really granted that fantasy, but at the same time had a mother who was absent just enough for the time in between to heal bad memories and conjure expectations, as outlined, I think, in Romulus from his album Michigan. Right now, he's making the world's most soft-spoken threat against his black shroud, his demons, vices, temptations. It's a visual that takes limited imagining. He's not the first to use an ethereal darkness to allude to his faults and fears, his depression, anxiety, and suicidal fantasies. But I still think that it works pretty well. And so we let the waves continue to carry us on, hoping to God that the tide moves quicker than the cloud that's swiftly approaching. And our prayers are soon answered. A major chord, ill-befitting in this sea of weepy guitar strings, cascades across the sky, washing it so thoroughly that our waves reflect a perfect blue.
I should have known better. Nothing can be changed. The past is still the past. The bridge to nowhere.
I do not exaggerate when I swear to you that I repeat this to myself on the semi-regular. For me, it's the perfect tagline for the album as a whole. We cannot venture backwards trying to fix what is broken. We can only rebuild from the pieces that are left. It's a more uplifting maxim than we're all gonna die in any case, so I'll continue to advocate for this concept as the core. Back in June, I wrote the script a year and a half ago, so back in June 2020, that would be now, when Lockdown 1 was starting to melt away, I did a nightly challenge with my family when we all picked a song according to a certain category. That night, the category was a song that moves you forward. I picked this one. My brother gave me an incredulous look at my selection, and I admit it must have seemed a bit of an odd choice, the single from an album that's direction is definitively down, but I just quoted that line in my abysmal falsetto, and its motivational qualities seemed to shine through. He's yet to have a daughter, but if he does, I must apologise to her in advance if I seem at all unimpressed. The illumination and beauty hype will be tough to live up to. All of Me Wants All of You is a delightfully raw yet untroubling song, reminiscent of the Call Me By Your Name soundtrack Sophiane would go on to compose not long after. And although the mystery of love and visions of Gideon introduced Sophiane to an entirely new audience of indie film fans and Fujiyoshis alike, the gentle strums and delightfully vibrant reverb are no less effective here. It's not a happy song, but it's not a sad one either. It's just real. That's it. And in that sense, it's a microcosm of Carrie and Lowell as a whole, not indulging in its emotions and disappointments, just acknowledging them. It's like being cradled by a summer's day, overt in its warmth and affection, but with that bittersweet awareness that the moment won't last. It's also about as close as this album gets to being catchy, opting for basic structure and simpler composition, with its pleasant chorus of echoes like nature shouting back on our declaration of love. Once our voice tires from shouting to the rooftops, the birds sing and the wind howls in their own special ways, keeping the song going for as long as we want it to. I'd listen to this song as you walk through fields brushing back and forth on a gentle August breeze. Niche, I know, but I can imagine it and I hope you can too. I'm yet to do it myself as I live in the UK, as you can probably tell from the pseudo-posh accent, so such circumstances are increasingly difficult to come by, but to any Brits watching, know that on the first such occasion, I'll be out there. A year and a half later, I'd like to add that I was, and it was nice. Ah yes, the vampire song. A cathartically tender moment of wonder moulded confusion and pain into a long exhale. It's not dissimilar to the spiritually jam-packed Seven Swans, especially to fan and personal favourite, To Be Alone With You. Sophiane has long been able to scatter a mass of religious allegories whilst never sounding preachy, and nowhere does that skill shine brighter than with Drawn to the Blood. They're dispersed across the poem with great care, attaching no narrative or agenda. They're merely channels for grief, a way for Sophiane to both visualise his pain and display his love and affection. But this is not to say that his imagination is trapped within the realms of biblical imagery. Drawn to the Blood, even in its limited lyrical breadth, is interwoven with some truly beautiful independent metaphor.
I'm drawn to the blood, the flight of a one-winged dove.
No animal is condemned to death like a bird with a broken wing, so it is tantamount to a war on peace to ground a dove. The cruelty of such an act is immediately evident to us. We are immersed in Sophiane's remorse at his own self-destructive behaviour. He is incapacitated, unable to explore, create, and adventure in the bondage of the demons that he feeds and waters. The solution to this vicious cycle is just out of reach. But he can't take flight, so we mourn in the dirt beside him. I often feel like All of Me and Drawn are a couplet, but where the former is the peace and tranquility of a warm summer night, Drawn finds peace in the vacuum of space, cold and dark but welcoming in its stillness nonetheless. Sophiane does love his astrology, and so do I. The song's deconstruction is long enough to put you in a trance. It sees the fading guitar and choir that rounds out the other songs and spits at them. You've been deconstructing too, huh? That's cool. Watch this. It lets you sink into the ground and then back out into the cosmos, too at peace in that moment to care how it happened.
Light struck from the lemon tree. What if I'd never seen hysterical light from Eugene?
It is better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. It's an aged and cliched idiom that wears more than it soothes, but it remains the core dilemma at the heart of Eugene. The first line of this stripped-back poem wonders aloud whether the glimpses of a functioning and loving maternal relationship were worth the disappointments that followed. Those sultry, sun-kissed days in Eugene, enveloped in a layer of sepia paint, seem like a fantasy now, idyllic beyond comprehension, a time in which hope for a consistent mother still existed. Now she's gone forever from this world, and all he has left is nostalgia for naivety, wondering if it was ever worth it. Eugene is minimalist enough to justify the idea that lyrics should be judged beside poetry as an equal, as, with the exception of the occasional harmonisation, it's really just one man and his guitar. You could hear it from the lonely corner of a cobbled town square and it wouldn't lose an ounce of its depth or integrity. Most songs in the album are raw, but Eugene is unique, almost puritanical in its lyricism. Contrasting to its predecessors, it rejects metaphor and imagery, biblical or otherwise, in favour of a story we can all understand. Especially stuff like that. We're more than aware that all love is temporary and those moments together are finite. Eventually, they'll be gone, and all that's left will be a memory before that fades too as we follow suit. We knew that as a kid, and upon escaping our emo phases and adolescent grandiose, we meet that feeling once again. Time's arrow stops for no one, and every day that passes marks one day less to the deadline, after which we can only make nostalgic fantasy out of mediocre memories. If only we'd stayed closer then. Or if they could have just stayed close for us. Maybe it wasn't worth it, after all.
Now I'm drunk and afraid, wishing the world would go away. What's the point of singing songs if they'll never even hear you?
Nah. It was worth it. Sadness only exists as a privation of happiness, so it's better to be sad at the absence of joy than to never have known joy to begin with. That's what the idiom means. And I believe it. The sound echoes around our mind like the last post lost in the howl of the wind. A sub-zero sound, one that in an instant pulls our feet out from under us and freezes us in solid. Like a stranger describing your imaginary friend, a rope around your stomach that pulls you into the sunken ground. And then the chords arrive, a hyperventilating heartbeat, magical only because it seemed that no melody could melt through the ice of the preface. There's no time, place, or circumstance that can truly emulate the way this song makes you feel. Only the burnt-out galaxy within us gives hostel. By the time Sophiane's lullaby vocals arrive, whispering into our elderly ears, we've disappeared into the isolated hospice. Taking a look out the window behind the plastic, paper-thin blinds to see nothing but an endless shadow awaiting us. I don't think we're on Earth. Not anymore. The heart monitor exhales in time with the music, baiting a flat line that may come any minute. We're holding hands with a figure under the covers, its face obscured by shadow, its arm gaunt, celadon. What are we doing here?
The evil had spread like a fever ahead. It was night when you died, my firefly. What could I have said to raise you from the dead? Oh, could I be the sky on the 4th of July? We're all gonna die.
We don't even feel ourselves say it, but our voice reverberates around the room all the same.
Did you get enough love, my little dove? Why do you cry? And I'm sorry I left, but it was for the best, though it never felt
No, it's okay. It's okay. Alright, don't worry about it now. It's all gonna be okay. I love you. We raise a hand to our cheek to find that it's blotchy and damp. Our eyes shut to condense the tears and to stop this image from seeping into our brain. But we're powerless in our efforts. The tears flow and the memory forms all the same. This shouldn't hurt so badly. You should be scared, not sad. I've got to get out of here.
The hospital asked, should the body be gassed before I say goodbye, my star in the sky. Such a funny thought to wrap you up in cloth. Do you find it alright, my dragonfly?
Her grip loosens, and only now do we realise how tight we were squeezing all this time. But we've got to let go. A figure enters the room dressed in a white coat. He has no eyes, just ashen holes. His skin is grey. He says he's sorry. We just nod. He drifts towards the bed where our mother lays, unplugs her. The weight of her loose arm sags her downward and she falls out, and so do we. The room disintegrates into discordant fragments, each table leg and paint layer exploding off into the cosmos. A black hole waits beneath us, sucking us in, its intense gravity unrelenting. We're pulled further and further away, and all that's left of our mother becomes smaller and smaller, and then it's gone. It's all gone. There's nothing left. We wake up in a new room. It's the same hospital, but it's morning. We can hear cars driving by and the distant chatter of doctors and visitors alike. A new man approaches us, so we're forced to look up. He points to an entity unknown and thrusts a form into our chest. At some point in time, he gazed upon us wrapped in cloth. He watched us unconscious, tucked us under a blanket. It's not a role we ever wanted to see reversed, but it's the least we can do. They take the thing away once again. We don't even try to get a final look. We don't want to.
Shall we look at the moon, my little loon? Why do you cry? Make the most of your life while it is rife, while it is light. While you do enough talk, my little hawk, why do you cry? Tell me, what did you learn from the Tillamook burn or the 4th of July?
The room bursts open again as each composite part is sucked up into the sun. There's a pause as we stand alone in complete nothing before the earth engulfs us one last time. We blink as the shadows of tongues bounce around us, the heat unmistakable. We've landed in a forest. It's one we went to with our family all those years ago. Skyscraper trees, crunchy leaves beneath our feet. Happy days. But it's not that same forest. Not anymore. It's burning. The pain comes in 2 stages. The burn hurts the most when it singes at your skin, melting your eyelids and boiling your saliva. But then your instincts kick in. You have to escape, you have to save yourself and make sure that everyone else is okay. You have to do. You don't truly feel that other pain until later. Later when you're lost in the burnt forest. There's no immediacy, no danger, just emptiness. Acres and acres of a desolate graveyard stretching in every direction. Your legs don't work, but even if they did, every way you could walk would lead you deeper in. So you just stay there, lost in the cemetery. with only the final truth of the universe for company. We're all gonna die. After reflecting on the mortality of his mother, Sofyan turns the mirror onto himself. If she died, why shouldn't he? Why not drive the car into a canyon or paint the bath red? There's nothing stopping him. Except there is. The only thing pulls no punches in its vividness and honesty, as it wonders aloud why this day shouldn't be its last. It's something that most of us in our most depressed and nihilistic moments have considered, and the song's comparative popularity reflects that. But like most of us in those moments, Sofyan doesn't really want to die. He just wants his life as he knows it to end. And he's desperate to find that one thing, just one thing that gives him a reason to stay, to fight off the demons that drag him down into that canyon. Be it the constellations one night or his faith in God the next. As long as each day brings something new, true and beautiful, he'll stay just to be witness. And thank God for that. Sofyan's vocals shine brightest here, I'd say, with his vulnerable falsetto as emotive as the instrumental is subtle.
Should I tear my eyes out now? Everything I see returns to you somehow. Should I tear my heart out now? Everything I feel returns to you somehow.
The gentle yet desperate tone of the bridge gashes our defences, as Sofyan begs the universe for some kind of answer. He could be referencing Jesus here, or Oedipus, or both, or neither, we can't be sure. But regardless, him tearing out his eyes to escape her and the predispositions to destruction that she brings is one of the most agonising yet beautiful images on the album. We feel the conflict of mourning that he suffers. He wants to remember her for her love, but is terrified of being next in the long line of inevitable failures and self-destructive addicts that make up his ancestors. He wants to break that chain, but not if it means losing her. But it's what comes next that cuts the deepest.
I wanna save you from your sorrow.
Children develop compassion and empathy too young. We want to help before we're capable of doing so, which leaves this horrendous gap in our lives where we can only watch as our loved ones suffer and grieve, understanding their pain but never their situation. All Sofyan wants is to make his mother happy, even now. And rationally, of course, he's not to blame for her sadness. He was near infancy when it all happened, but the pain of losing her still resides. And juggling anger in the presence of love is a tumultuous task. I don't want to put words in his mouth, especially ones that are probably projections of whatever I've got going on, but that's always what I hear when he utters that confession. Was it our fault? Why did she leave? Did she ever love us like we did her? We'll never have those questions answered. Why did she have to die? Well, because that's just the way things go, as the previous song constantly reminds us. It's not just a fact of life, it is the fact of life, along with taxes and the Falcon's choking leads. We'll just collapse if we don't move on, so on we march, time's arrow flying by our side.
Should I tear
But why shouldn't we just kill ourselves now? Get it over with. If all we do is grieve for our loved one's mortality, then why not embrace our own? There's no straight answer to that one either, unfortunately. And Sophian's call to the universe will inevitably come back silent. If there is some greater meaning, it's not one we can find. The only thing we have is ourselves. John, my beloved, proves that it is possible to be cold and tender. Personifying his faith as a lover is a technique Sophian is well versed in, so whilst creating a viscerally heartfelt love song about an abstract need is no mean feat, Sophian manages and then some. As the muted chords progress in the rainy cafe silence, he laments at his inability to read his partner at the bar, his words slurred from months of substance abuse, his vision blurred from decades of disillusionment. The only thing that's kept him going these last weeks lies right in front of him, and yet he can't quite see it. Not really. Is it beauty in the eye of the beholder, or is it a fundamental, unchangeable truth that he'll never ascertain? Does it really matter? We move on. Sick of trying to define, we once again accept a place of amorous neutrality with this shrouded entity in front of us. Friends? Sure. It's futile attempting to communicate anyway. That ship of understanding has well and truly sailed. The inevitable pang returns though, as it's prone to do of late. They're gone. A gaping hole remains, and this mysterious entity is failing miserably to fill it. And we've tried everything, from cheap sex to prayer and worship, but nothing's really worked. We're stupid, flawed, and condemned to pleading at the needs of our demons. We're just that human. Icarus, point to the sun.
So can we be friends sweetly before the mystery ends? I love you more than the world can contain in its lonely and ramshackle head. There's only a shadow of me in a matter of speaking. I'm dead.
What a beautiful lyric. Really. I've used a variation of words in this video like desperate, gentle, honest, raw, and this one is all of these at once. It's got a little bit of Connor Oberst in it, that edge of tears tone symptomatic of many a singer-songwriter, soft and wavering like a hormonal librarian. It illustrates how less is sometimes more. John, my beloved, is thoroughly uncluttered, no clouds or chemtrails in the composition sky. Sophian's voice allowed to truly shine.
I'm holding my breath, my tongue on your chest. What can be said of my heart?
The song ends with Sophian bartering with his future, pleading for protection from the falling fossils of nostalgia and for some love to fill the hole that's devouring him from the inside out. Otherwise he'll fade into a ghost, a recollection of his soul, more of an echo than an entity. So please, just somewhere safe and warm for the night. That would be more than enough.
Now that I fell into your arms, my only lover, give out to give in. I search for the castle I lost.
There's no shade in the shadow of the cross. There's no comfort in the death of a curse. No matter how far away she lies, the shadow of her gravestone looms large over Sophia, that pathological self-destruct as essence seeping into him. Fuck me, he's falling apart. No shade in the shadow of the cross is an achingly sad work of art, albeit in a different sort of way to the soul-eviscerating misery that 4th of July brings. Because 4th of July is a tearjerker, the wound is still open and burning like hell. No shade is nihilistic, defeated. It's the lament of an exhausted soul who just wants it to be over, an old wound that still bleeds on the body of a brain that has no interest in stemming it. That stinging pain is long gone. All that's left now is for the hemorrhage to follow through. Sufjan uses a variation of simile and metaphor like he does with most, if not all, of his lyrics, but they stand out to me in no shade for how immediate they are. He's chasing the dragon. He's like a fighter or a vampire embracing its own foil. We get it because it's so instant, so core, there's no reference that we need to look up to understand. He's tired, uncaring and lost. The motivation for reflection has evaporated. The metaphor is simple because fuck making it complicated, fuck layering and double entendres, fuck allegory and biblical homages, fuck all of it. We don't have much time left, so we may as well keep it concise. It's going to be beautiful regardless.
There's blood on that blade. Fuck me, I'm falling apart. My assassin like Casper the Ghost.
Fittingly, it very much feels like the penultimate episode in a TV season, where everything comes together in one resounding crescendo. There's blood on that blade, he did cut himself in that warm bath after all. There's wings on that stone, maybe he will take flight at last. The way in which No Shade differs from your conventional crescendo, however, is what makes it so goddamn sad. It's quiet. It's not amalgamating like a musical reprise in a blaze of glory and fireworks. It's falling and flailing like a fucking piranha plant. Not a bang, but a whimper. An ending as pathetic as it was inevitable. There's no point calling for help. A man that falls in a desolate forest makes no sound. There's no one there to hear it. And don't try hiding under what's left. There's no shade in the shadow of the cross. Say it with me, kids. Severely underrated. This video's message, if nothing else, is that the quality of music is almost entirely subjective. I'm not making a case for why Carrie and Lowell is objectively the best album ever made. I'm just explaining why it's my favourite album, and I'm barely even doing that. However, within the more critical circles, Blue Bucket of Gold is very much the forgotten child, the one you can't remember when listing out the album in a very morose music section of a pub quiz. It's the least listened to on Spotify, at least at the time of writing, which serves only to perpetuate its abandoned status. However, Blue Bucket of Gold is a masterpiece, and I genuinely believe that. Not a note is out of place, not a point can be improved. I'm not saying that it's my favourite, but I am saying that it's perfect. Because it is. Sorrowful would be an apt adjective to describe the entirety of Carrie and Lowell, but this song in particular embodies that feeling. It takes after 4th of July with its chorda pedal effect and quarter note progressions which provide that cold, lonely backdrop for Sofian's sombre plea to his surroundings, for friendship or comfort. But unlike in 4th of July, nothing replies. And suddenly we disintegrate. The surroundings that we're begging to all become dust, our so important sandcastles collapsing in the storm. We look around and see nothing but a whirlwind of ash and dirt, nuclear fallout of infinite desolation. It's what Oppenheimer sees when he closed his eyes, that desolate forest devoid of trees. Something used to be here, but it's gone now. It's foolish. We know it is. But a part of us believes that the outreach of a hand must always be followed by a grasp in return. This is the aftermath. The worst is behind us, so it can only go up from here, right? Won't someone take the place that our mother never could? There has to be someone who can fill that hole. The discovery of the Blue Bucket mine predated the California gold rush, so you can imagine the excitement for a poor family stuck out in the wilderness. The allure of riches so bountiful you could fill a bucket to the brim with gold in a day must have felt like, well, a golden firefly in that dark and desolate wilderness. This magical image, the idea that somewhere out there is the solution to all life's ailments, the belief that once you find the mine, your life would finally mean something. You'd be happy with your blue bucket of gold. But deep down, you know you'll never get there, and this myth of the bucket will remain just that. It will only ever exist in our mind. That's all we'll ever have. Blue bucket of gold, a companion in the afterlife, a reliable, loving mother. They're all waiting at that station, just one stop away. The story will always be more exciting than reality. We've known that for a long time, but we can finally feel it now. Lost in a world far too wide for us. We can't find the right words to illustrate this deity we've created and lived with all this time. And this life spent searching has left us with nothing but dust that just slips through our fingers. But I guess that's better than nothing.